Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about exploring world history, lesson 6. It's called creation. And those of us who are Christians basically should know the creation story. And it's the story of mankind, and it begins with the creative act of God. It's found in both Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. And there's some people who question creation, and not that it even exists, or that it's there in the Bible, but that whether it's literal or poetic. And some see that account of creation in Genesis as a broad, non-literal sketch that portrays creation in a poetic form. They want to compare it and put it on the same level as, say, Homer or other ancient poetic works. But we know that that's not true. So creation is actually literal. Each day was a day. There's some problems from seeing Genesis as merely poetic and not literal, and those are these. When does Genesis narrative become literal or true? Is the account of sin also to be taken literal? Or is it just poetry? Is the flood story only figurative? At what point do we take Genesis as history? And we as Christians believe it all is inaccurate. So let's go back to creation according to the Bible. Right? The beginning of mankind according to the Bible. The beginning of the world according to the Bible. Where science begins according to the Bible. In creation, if you've read in Genesis, as you should have, or looked at the book as you should have, we're going to talk about just the days of creation, just briefly, because like I said, you should have already covered this. But day 1, Genesis 1, verses 3 to 5, talks about light. God separated the light. He said, let there be light, and then separated it from the darkness. Day 2, he separated the waters in the sky and the firmament, and that's Genesis 1, 6 through 8. Day 3, he created the dry land, the vegetation, the trees, everything that we have on the dry land, Genesis 1, 9 to 13. Day 4 is the light in the expanse. He created the sun, the moon, the stars, everything that we have, Genesis 1, 14 through 19. Birds and the fish, the air, everything in the air and the water, he created on day 5 in Genesis 1, 20 through 23. Day 6 was animals and man, everything on the dry land, Genesis 1, 24 to 31. And then, as we know, on day 7, God rested. So on day 6, when man is being made and woman is being made, he says man is made in God's image as a spiritual being. And that is extremely important, as we will continue to look at that, and that should be something that's part of your core belief system. And it's found in Genesis 1:26, where it talks about man is made in God's image, distinct from all other creatures. No other creatures are made in God's image. And if you look at Genesis 2, verse 7, it talks about the physical body being made, but also that God breathed the breath of life into man and gave us his breath, his life that he created and put in us. And continuing in Genesis, woman was made from man, taken from his rib, made for him to be a helpmate, to help complete him, to help him have a partner in life. And when you look at that, it says man and women were joined together as one. And this shows God intended the family to be the cornerstone of human life and throughout society. And then we get into more modern day, and a lot of times people, who debate creation and want to say that wasn't exactly what's going on, will say that we aren't all related. However, we are all related, and we know that because the Bible says so. We're all descendants of Adam. But also, as modern technology is starting to catch up to the Bible, basically, they are starting to, you look on a different websites where they trace your ancestry or whatever, they're showing that we all come from a common ancestor, and that's very important. It's important for also other reasons too, because people want to try to segregate and put people in different categories based on, where they live, where they grew up, color of their skin, and these are all things that are complete nonsense, because we are all God's creatures. We all come from the same ancestors. We're all something that God made, and we're all made in his image. So let's go back to Adam and Eve, right? God made them. He puts them in the Garden of Eden. And that's found in Genesis 2, 10 to 14. those verses talk some of the important things that are going on around in there, and the beauty of it. It also tells us of the four rivers that are there: the Pishon, the Gihon, the Tigris, and the Euphrates. And I say very familiar. I'm very familiar with Tigris and Euphrates. I used to teach geography as well, so I'm very familiar with that area and the things that are there. Yeah, and so that puts us in modern day Iraq. Modern day Iraq, okay? So, also known as the cradle of civilization, an area called Babylon, and in that garden, God put everything that Adam and Eve would need to survive. It was beautiful, it was majestic, it was something that they had no need of anything else, and they could have lived there forever had they not sinned. But Christianity is also not the only religion or group of people that have creation stories. Pretty much every civilization has some form of a creation story, and they continue to discuss those and whatever. Most cultures of the world have stories that attempt to describe the creation of the world. Most are very fanciful stories. Most are very detail-oriented, lots of pomp and circumstance, if you will, lots of colorful language to try to portray what's going on, but none of it is actually like the Bible says. It's not exactly correct, okay? One example we want to talk about, and like I said, there's many of them, is the Enuma Elish from the ancient Babylonian Empire. They talked about there's many different gods, multiple gods, and they start fighting each other. And as they're fighting each other, having different battles, the physical universe and different elements of the physical universe start to fall out and become put together, and that's how the world was created, the universe was created. And this story, like many others from different cultures, combines myths, polytheism, and some form of religion to create a fantasy story. But also, these stories have some similarities. Light pierces darkness, various elements of the world come into being, man is created, and the gods rest. But it's not the same story. It's not the same as what's put in the Bible. The Bible shows an inspired understanding of the truth about the world. The Enuma Elish and others are a corruption of that original story. So what I would encourage you to do, as we're talking about creation, is just quickly go back and read Genesis 1. Look at the Bible verses that talk about what happened on each day, and realize that each day was a literal 24-hour day where God spoke the world into existence, and make sure you're familiar with those, and that will be helpful as we continue to learn and study. Thanks.